Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity. I'm your host, Dan, and as always, I'm joined by our co-host, Brad. How you doing, buddy?
I've had a crazy day, man. It's been
Yeah.
wild. How are
Yeah,
you
what
doing?
happened? What happened?
Uh, Art fair for my daughter at her school was cool but chaotic. My son figured out how to lock doors. He's 3, so he locked the bathroom door. It had it's a privacy lock, so I was able to get it open. But trying to get them ready for bed, gonna go in there to brush his teeth and make sure he goes to the bathroom and the door's locked. And then I'm in this mad scramble to try to find a little screwdriver that would fit to open it up. They both tried to chase each other around in their underwear for 10 minutes. It was awesome.
That's fun, man. I've told you this before, but you're gonna miss this age when it's gone. I'm
Yeah.
dealing with the attitudes of preteens and teenagers, so it's a
Preteen
blast.
angst.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, man.
every age has its problems and its graces, so
Uh,
enjoy it. But
yeah, it's
today we want to talk about a topic that's a little off of what we've talked about so far. Today we want to touch on the idea of financial freedom and what that means to men as a whole and how it helps you untame your masculinity. Um, Financial freedom is a large topic, right? And there's whole section of podcasting and business associated with it. Names like Dave Ramsey come to mind in terms of guys who can give you good advice on this or give you advice. You can be the judge of whether it's good or not. But
yeah.
you know, I think probably the best way for us to start would be to talk about what we mean by financial freedom and how that works with the idea of debt and all that. So you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. I want to preface this by saying we're not going to give you very specific things in this episode that you should or shouldn't do. We're not going to give you the Dave Ramsey snowball. We're not going to tell you about Robert Kiyosaki. We're not going to give you the whole house flipping philosophy. There are 1,000,000,000 different philosophies, strategies, and ideas. This is really going to boil down to the nuts and bolts, the brass tacks, if you will, of why it's important to not be burdened by debt, why it's important to put yourself in a position where financially you can feel liberated. And what really kicked this idea off for me was a realization that I had yesterday. My wife and I built a house last year. Um, at the time that we bought it, the housing market had already started to inflate. This was early 2021. We live in Utah, where the housing market here has been booming for a while. We put in an offer on our house. We paid more than we thought we should have for a new house. It's a it was more than we were expecting, but at the same time, in the last year, this has been literally 12 months since that offer was accepted. A friend of mine reached out to me and he said, "Hey, Brad, I'm looking to put in a bid on your same floor plan in your same development." I was like, "Cool, that's exciting." And so he put in a bid. The initial list price for the house was over $100,000 more than the initial list price for the house that my wife and I got. Same floor plan, slightly smaller lot, same features and finishes and everything. $100,000. However, due to the crazy market in which we live right now, with demand being such that it is, the winning bid that was accepted for that house, because everything went through bidding, was $75,000 more than that. So I sat here thinking, I'm sitting on potentially $175,000 or more of equity in a house that I've lived in for a year. What the hell? And my wife and I, something else that we did is before we moved into our current house, we previously lived in a townhouse. We kept that and we're renting it. And seeing how much that townhouse is worth versus what we paid for it is stupid.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And when I sit here thinking about all these things, do we feel blessed and fortunate for that? Absolutely. But what laid the groundwork for us to be in that sort of situation was the fact that we took care of our finances. I'm not going to dive into it quite yet, but I wasn't always that way. I was saddled with a lot of debt, and making the choice and putting forth the hard work and the effort to get rid of all of that debt enabled us to be in a situation where we could afford a house, where we see ridiculous returns in this crazy market in which we live, all because we decided we're not going to allow debt to saddle or cripple us. So, Dan, I don't know what you think, but
Well,
that's kind of where I'm coming from with this one.
I've got a similar story to yours, but it goes the other way, right? So I bought my house at the end of 2006. So the market was very similar to the way it is right now.
Yeah.
But I bought my house and it felt like literally the next day the market jumped off a cliff. That was 2006. You know, we were first-time home buyers. You could basically, as long as you were fogging a mirror, you could get a mortgage back then. Um, we did stupid stuff. We got adjustable rate mortgages. We all kinds of crazy stuff. Bottom line is about, I want to say about 6 or 7 years later, I had the opportunity to change jobs and go to work for Raytheon up in the Boston area. So I've mentioned it before, but I'm from that area. This was a chance for me to quote unquote go home and go through the whole interview process, get the job offer. You know, the money's good, the relocation package is great. And on Friday afternoon, I gave them a verbal commit. And I was just going to sign the paperwork that weekend, send it back to them on Monday. That weekend, my wife and I sat down and did like a final numbers crunch. And we realized that after all was said and done, and we had done the move and we had sold the house and all this stuff, we were going to be underwater about $40,000 to $50,000.
Wow.
And this was after owning the house for 6 or 7 years, right? Needless to say, I was quite upset. And we didn't make the move in life. You know, I've stayed on Long Island since then. And since then, fortunately, knock on wood, the market has rebounded and we've made good financial moves with our house and our mortgage and stuff. But yeah, it's funny how that debt controls you and controls your ability to do certain things, right? So I had I not been in that financial situation, and listen, might sound like an excuse, but a big part of that was out of my control. We bought a house. We had no idea the market was going to drop. If we had waited just 6 months, we could have got this house for much less than we paid for it. You know, I would be living in a different area of the country. I would be having a different career. God knows where I would be and what would be going on. So, I mean, it's to me, it's just an interesting story. You know, you're seeing the flip side of it right now. So,
yeah, the butterfly effect, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I do digress in saying I'm not sitting here saying, look at how wealthy I am or anything like that. I mean, as Robert Kiyosaki, excuse me, eloquently states in his book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, real estate is not an asset, right? Like these are unrealized gains. The market could flip on me just like it did for you.
Right.
But it did open up a conversation of when you are in a position where you can have a house or you can go upside down on a house and you're still afloat and you can still hold on, it really liberates you as a man. So I know I told you I was going to hold off on this story of mine of my financial stupidity, but let me tell you a story. The year was 2011. I was 26. I was just graduating college. I was horrible with finances all throughout college. I know you're probably looking at me saying, why in the world did you graduate college at 26? There's a lot to it, but so I'm sitting there. I was somebody who felt that the way to impress a female was to wine her and dine her and spend lots and lots of money on her. So I was in relationships. where I would take these girls on vacations. You know, being in Utah, I'm not talking take them to Vegas. I'm not talking take them to Moab. I'm talking take them to the Caribbean,
Oh,
take them to New York City, take them to
oh,
Disneyland. Yeah. And all during this time, I was working at college jobs, making $12 an hour. I was still taking out the maximum amount of student loans that I could. And I had credit cards open, and I was living a lifestyle where I just wanted to impress them, live it up, go eat out, go hang out, go do all these things that I wanted to do. And the crescendo started in the summer of 2011. So all this time, I'm accumulating student loan debt. It's piling up. I start opening credit cards. I'm piling up the credit card debt. I took out a $5,000 credit card just to go to the Caribbean. Took I paid for 3 different people, myself included, to go to the Caribbean, lodging and everything. It was ridiculous. And in the back of my head, I said, I'm going to get a job out of college. Everything's going to work out. I'm going to be able to pay off all this debt. Things will be gravy, be ready to rock and roll. So I graduate college in 2011. I get a job. I thought I'd made it. I thought they were going to pay me the big bucks because they came back and told me that the starting salary was $31,000 a year. It was 10 years ago, but I thought I'd made it at 31K. I take this job. During that time, I decided to take the girl that I was kind of dating at the time to Disneyland. But decided to pay for her and her best friend. We took my friend as well. I paid for the hotel. I paid for entry passes into Disneyland and everything else. Credit cards were maxed out. I didn't have any money in the bank, but I still wanted to go. I was hell bent on going. So I committed
oof.
the worst of cardinal sins that you could imagine. I took out payday loans.
Oh,
Oh yeah. So I'd saddled myself with payday loans to be able to fully fund for this trip. Went on the trip, came back. Needless to say, things with that girl did not work out at all. And a month later, because I was so obsessed with this girl that I wasn't focused on this big paying $31,000 a year job, I was fired from that job. So because I was fired and had no money coming in, with outstanding payday loans, with outstanding credit cards, and because it was getting closer to being out of school for 6 months, unless I chose to completely defer, student loans were staring me down. So as an unemployed guy living with a bunch of roommates, I looked at myself and said, there's absolutely no way out of this. I'm going to have to declare bankruptcy. I'm screwed. I don't know what to do. And I remember that was the beginning of a journey of pulling myself up and slowly but surely digging my way out. I'm not going to sit here and say I was cured that day. You know, my wife would tell you otherwise. I still had credit cards. I still struggled with credit card debt for years. But that was the start of the foundation of I'm at rock bottom. What the hell am I going to do to get out of this? But I will tell you, when you're at rock bottom or you're at the mercy of creditors, the feeling that you have is abject hopelessness. You feel completely hopeless. I'll never forget sitting there in this crappy house with no money, no food, feeling hopeless. So that was my story. Pretty pathetic, right?
uh, we've all been there in some sense. I don't know that I was that far down the rabbit hole, but
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I can remember going to college and opening, I don't know how many credit cards I opened because I got a free t-shirt out of it, right? And then you just start using it because it's free money. And you just pay the $20 or whatever it is a month to cover the minimum and you're on to the next thing. And I found myself in similar situations. I probably caught on a little bit quicker and was probably a little more or a little less likely to take people on vacations like you. But yeah, listen, I've been there. I know what that's like. Um, but the idea of financial freedom, right? This this concept is something that I think is unique to everyone in the sense that I don't think you and I have the same ideas of financial freedom, but I think, not even I think, there are similarities across the board for everyone's definition, right? So
Yeah.
that's a good place to start, right? So I can start talking about my ideas of financial freedom.
Yeah.
Um, you know, my goal in life is to minimize, well, I should say my goal in life, but my financial goal in life is to minimize my bills and maximize my savings as much as possible so that I can eventually retire at some point. So how do I do that, right? Well, I have successfully paid off all credit card debts for a while now. Believe me, I was in the probably north of 25K at one point. So been there, done that. We don't have any loans uh, other than the mortgage, and I don't. The only thing that we do is that's probably a little counterintuitive is we lease vehicles, and my idea there is that I would rather lease and get a new vehicle every 3 years and not have to deal with any major maintenance problems. So it's almost like an insurance policy in my mind, but that is an argument that can be had. But I've also gotten to a point now where I'm not paying anything else, where I can kind of afford that little bit of luxury of a new vehicle. But that's my idea of financial freedom, right? I don't sweat every month the Visa bill coming in with the Amex, with the Discover, and 2 or 3 loans. It just doesn't happen anymore. It did, and we were eating, ramen in hand for more than a few months.
Yeah.
So, but that's my general idea of financial freedom, and we can get into a little bit about what that opens you up for down the road. But I'd like to hear what your idea of financial freedom looks like.
No, I think we're pretty similar um, in a lot of ways. Financial freedom to me is being willing to make sacrifices to now short-term pain for long-term gain. And to illustrate what that means is going back to my story. The way that I got out of that predicament and that pickle was a lot of short-term pain, a lot of sacrificing. For a guy who spent a lot of his life being extraordinarily materialistic, the only way I was able to shake loose of that was by ultimately sacrificing that materialism. Along the way, I used to have a truck. It was a lifted Toyota Tacoma. I loved this thing with all of my heart. It was sexy. It was rad. It was a badass vehicle. And to my credit, if you look back at my 20s, I made one really good choice. That one really good choice was marrying my wife. She is prudent, she is practical, she is financially, fiscally responsible. She is the ultimate persona of sacrifice and practicality. She allowed me to buy that truck when we hadn't had any kids. So yes, I was still paying off my debt, but when you have 2 incomes and no kids, you have a little bit more discretionary income. She sat me down and said, Brad, I know this is going to hurt, but if you sell that truck, your student loans will almost be gone. That conversation sucked. I hated selling that truck. And to this day, I miss that thing. But I looked at myself and looked at her and realized she was right. She was thinking of our long term future
Yeah.
and the ability to unshackle ourselves from the horrors of debt. I'd been where I was almost bankrupt. I I lived in a situation where I had a recurring credit card balance with no money in my savings account for so long that could have been out of my way. So I sold the truck and almost paid off my student loans and worked countless overtime at a job I absolutely hated to be able to dig our way out of debt. There's a lot of sacrifice in there. To this day, I still continue to sacrifice because although I could afford a nice car, if I really wanted to, I choose to drive a $4,000 rebuilt title Nissan Altima. It gets me from point A to Z. It runs fine because I know that I don't need a nice car. Our
Yeah.
situations in terms of our philosophies with cars are a little different.
Yep.
Would I love a truck? Sure. That day will come. For right now, while it comes to building wealth, setting ourselves up for financial freedom for the rest of our lives, I'm okay sacrificing. I think that the key to financial freedom is a willingness to sacrifice something right now to help and benefit yourself long term. That $5 you could have spent now on a delicious hamburger from, I don't know, Five Guys, but Five Guys hamburgers are like $12 these days. If you take that money and you invest it, that $5 or $10 now becomes potentially $100 down the road.
Right.
That sacrifice is setting your future self up for freedom, for peace of mind, for comfort. That's my definition.
So that dovetails nicely into the next kind of topic of, you know, the opportunities that open up when you establish financial freedom. Right. So we've both talked about kind of we talked about our house stories. We've both talked about kind of what our idea of financial freedom is. Um, you know, once you achieve a certain level of financial freedom, and I think it's important to point out that it's kind of an ongoing journey, right? Because your life is always changing, right? I'm hitting a point now where I've got twin 12-year-olds. I'm staring down the barrel of college in 6 years. So my financial world is starting to change because we've been prepping for that, but we're really starting to go, okay, we've got a limited time frame now to budget for that and work for that. So, there's always something in the future that tweaks that. But financial freedom opens up a world of opportunities for you. To me, the biggest one is simply the peace of mind that comes with knowing that I know exactly what my bills are every month. I know that I can cover them, and I know that I have surplus, which means that if the fridge goes, if the transmission in my car goes, if you know the tree outside falls and damages my roof, I can cover all of that relatively easy without having to worry about where the money's coming from. I've got a couple of bucks saved up in the bank, and there's no other creditors looking for money. So that alone makes me sleep better at night.
You think about that. What's the statistic that what percentage of Americans is it that don't even have $1,000 in a savings account to cover for an emergency? It's
I
an
don't know what it
astronomical
is, but
percentage, right?
it's far too high. Yeah. Uh,
So you think about that. That's $1,000. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat that. That's not a lot of money. Our water heater recently went out, and that was $1,600.
yeah.
That's a water heater. Those things don't last that long. If you need a new set of tires on your car, it's probably $1,000 right there.
Yeah.
These things come up all the time. If you have that sort of freedom, that financial security to say, all right, these inevitable things that come up that always do hit, and I'm not sabotaged or cut off at the knees, how empowering is it? How nice is it to know that, oh man, I need new tires on my truck? Like, I mean, you're leasing, you probably don't run into that too often, but your water heater goes out. You need a new roof.
Dude,
You need,
I just this last weekend though, I was on vacation up in New Jersey, ran over some kind of metal hook and blew a hole in one of my tires. So I
yeah,
have to replace at least one. I mean,
yeah,
it happens. That crap happens. That's going to
yeah.
be whatever, a couple $100 for a truck tire. So
And knowing that you're not going to have heartburn and aggravation and stress and sleepless nights over that, it feels pretty good, doesn't it?
yeah, well, I mean, it's funny we bring this up because my wife and I were actually talking about that. So we went away on this little trip last weekend, just the two of us. We go for a nice hike in a state park out in Jersey. And as we're driving out, I get a message on the console that I got low pressure in my right rear. And we watched the pressure go from 30 to 25, and all of a sudden it's single digits. I'm like, oh, I can't make it to the gas station. I gotta pull over and see what's going on. And I had this big metal hook. I think I sent you a picture.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
stuck to like the inside sidewall of the tire. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that would have ruined the entire trip for me because I would have gone, oh, here's another couple $100 that I got to spend on this trip that's already, you know, costing me money. And it would just mentally put me in a bad place because of where we are. And listen, neither Brad or I are trying to toot our own horns. We've worked hard to get where we're at. So, you know, let's just leave with that. But because of where we are in our life and what we've done to financially gain some freedom, it was like a non-factor. Like we were joking about it on the side of the road, like, ah, you know, I got to spend, a couple hours this week tracking down the right tire and getting it replaced. But it wasn't like something that worried us or bothered us or caused any heartburn for the rest of the trip. It was just a funny story now. And to me, that's what financial freedom is.
So there's a book that was called Everyday Millionaires, written by Chris Hogan, one of Dave Ramsey's guys. I really
Yep.
like Chris Hogan. I always thought he's got a really good message. Have you ever heard of that book or read it by chance?
I've heard the title, but that's about
So
all.
what's so interesting about that book is I gave it a read, and he talks about the two professions that churn out the most millionaires. Engineers are one, which makes sense, and they have the mindset for that. The second one, teachers.
Yeah.
We all know that unless I think the state of New York, teachers get paid pretty well. But for the most part, nationally, teachers don't get paid that well.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, teachers, educators, have a very good chance of becoming a millionaire. People who might cap out at $60,000 a year. Okay. When I look at myself, I don't make nearly as much as most of my friends probably. I have a lot of friends who make well into the six figures, and they are saddled with debt.
Yep.
But they also have a trailer, and they also have four-wheelers, and they also have a cabin, and they also go out to eat every single meal of the day. The truth of the matter is, when it comes to establishing financial freedom and making yourself free, it is getting yourself out of debt at all costs. As Dan said, all he has is his mortgage. My wife and I, all we have is our mortgage. And I tell you what, not knowing that we don't have to write a $500 credit card payment. I was going to say check. Checks aren't really a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Send $500 to the credit card company every month and send $900 to some bloated car payment every month and send $600 for this awesome camper that we have, because I don't have to spend that money. I can use that additional. That's almost as if it's a salary increase. You look at somebody who makes $100,000 a year, but they're spending $5,000 a month on crap. Somebody who makes $50,000 a year, half of that, and doesn't spend any money on crap. If you look at it that way, their salaries, their take-home pay is almost equal. So the ability to free yourself from the burdens of debt, that's what's going to set you up to have success in the future. Yeah, it sucks. You think of Dave Ramsey's quote of live like no one else now so you can live and give like no one else later. It takes a special breed to be willing to eat ramen and drive a crappy car
Yeah.
and make those sacrifices. And it's not for everybody. I don't necessarily adhere to everything Ramsey says. I don't think that you should drive a beater car and eat ramen and beans and never go anywhere on any vacations or trips. I get that that's absolutely necessary for people who are on their knees, bending to the knee of a creditor. But for most people, that's not realistic, nor is it enjoyable. But there are so many sacrifices that people can make that they're unwilling to, just to keep up with the Joneses.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I'll take your last point first.
Okay.
The idea of sacrifices, if you take a look at a lot of people, it's not even sacrifices, it's just cutting out the fluff. Right. And nobody wants to hear that, but there's a lot of fluff in everyone's life. And until you've gotten to the point where you've got all the basics taken care of and you're out of credit card debt and you're out of student loan debt and you're out of everything but, let's say, the mortgage. Cut the fluff. You don't need that Starbucks every day. You can make coffee at home. That's a simple one. Make your lunch at home, right? I mean, I'll be honest, this week I've been really lazy because we haven't had a lot of leftovers and the wife's traveling and I'm just not nearly as organized as her. I've been eating out a lot more for lunch. Dropping $15, $20 a day. I mean, that adds up quick. Or feeding a family of four, I ordered in Italian food for the two girls and I tonight. It was $50 for 3 meals. I mean, it just, it goes a lot quicker than it comes. So you start cutting that stuff out, it starts to add up. I'll go to your other point though with the Dave Ramsey thing, whereas beans and rice and beans, live like no one else so you can live like no one else kind of mentality. In theory, that works great.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a break though. Yeah. Listen, you got all that credit card debt. I'm a firm believer that, if you've gotten through a half to 3/4 of your debt snowball that like he talks about, that it's time to take a little breath and reward yourself with a small vacation or something, because you've been working your ass off to get there. I'm not saying go into debt to do it. You should be saving to do that, so that it's not finance money. It's just your money that you're spending. But I think mentally it puts you in a good spot to be like, okay, I've achieved all this. I got a little taste of the good life, and now it's time to buckle down and finish the last 20% or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's probably where I differ with him. And then finally, you talked about your friends who make significantly more than you, well into the 6 figures, and they're straddled with debt. It's a classic case of like Parkinson's law. So Parkinson's law says, that the work expands to fill the available time or whatever. It's the same concept, right? It's if you keep making more and more money, but you keep straddling yourself with more and more debt as you make that more money, you're not doing yourself any favors. All you're doing is setting yourself up for more and more disaster in the odd chance that you get laid off and lose that income somehow. So, one way that my wife and I have kind of fought that problem is every time we get a pay increase, we establish that at least half of that pay is just going to go into a savings account, so that we're used to living on a set salary. Maybe we'll get a little bump, but at least some of that's getting saved and we're not even touching it. And it just builds over time. And that's one way of kind of just controlling that spending inflation that can occur.
Yeah, the lifestyle creep, if you will, right?
That's a great term to use. Yeah.
Yeah. That's something I think about a lot, is as your salary goes up, it's real easy to think, well, shoot, I've got this extra money. What can I spend it on? What can I afford now? To your point and what you talked about with losing your job, and as you referred to earlier in the episode with your house back during the bubble back in 2008 and 2009, that could be taken away from you at any moment. So one thing that my wife, I attribute everything that I've figured out in life with finances to her. So I would suggest, if any of you have wives who are, or girlfriends or significant others who are go to finances, listen to them. If not, good luck. But one of the things she taught me is whenever we get a raise, whenever we get a bonus, there's a certain percentage of that that's always going to go to savings automatically. It never hits our account, so you never have that mental vision of, oh, my checking account says I have $3,000 in it today instead of 1,000, or whatever those numbers are. If that number's there in front of you staring at you, you are going to be tempted to act on it and do something dumb. If you tuck it away in a savings account, if you invest it in a 401k or in your IRA or whatever that looks like, you're so much less likely to actually act and spend that money, because it sets the expectation that, yeah, you're making more, but you're living a consistent lifestyle. You remove that lifestyle creep from the equation. So yeah, what you said was spot on. It's really important to do that, because there are little things that we do as humans that if you look in your bank account and you see more money than you expect, what's the first thing you tell yourself? Even if you don't act on it, you're like, oh, what can I use that on?
Oh yeah. I
What
mean,
was that?
I think I told you the other day, right? We were redoing our kitchen, so we were moving around some money, and I ended up having about 60K in my checking account.
Right.
And I was just sitting there going, there's a new truck just sitting there ready to go.
Sitting there
You know,
ready
had
for you.
that immediate reaction. So it's, yeah, that's human nature. But it's
Yeah.
the important thing though too with and your wife sounds like she's got basically the same kind of program that we run here going on with the raises and the bonuses, is that you get to enjoy a little bit of it, but you have to save a good portion of it. The key that I found with that whole process though is to not get yourself stuck in this covert contract of, well, damn it, I worked hard and I got a raise or I got a bonus and I don't even get to enjoy it because we just have to save it for a rainy day or for the future. You can't get into that mindset. You have to find a way, and my thought is that if you split it somehow, whether it's 50-50, 60-40, however you're taking that money and you put a big chunk into savings, but you get a little piece of that pie to play with, however it is, that's important for your mental health, in the sense of, yep, I've achieved something, I get to enjoy it a touch, and now I get to work harder to get to do it again or to get more, whatever that is. But you're not just going, well, that was great, I got a bonus and it's all over here in money that I can't touch till I'm 70 years old.
Well, you think of the very concept of a bonus or a raise, like your company is rewarding you for doing a good job. And it's, in a lot of sense, it's a motivation to continue to perform. So if you're not rewarding yourself for the performance that you've put in and worked on, you're doing yourself a disservice. I mean, this is an interesting conversation considering literally today my annual bonus for my company was deposited into our account. So, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what can I do with some of this money? But again, it's an expectation of, I don't want most of it. If I were given half of what that bonus was, I honestly wouldn't know what to do with it. So I'm okay taking a couple $100 and spending it on something for myself as a reward. But I also understand, and I'm not naive enough to think that that's going to necessarily work right off the bat for everybody. If you earned an annual bonus or got a raise or whatever from your company and you're sitting on a few thousand extra dollars, I'm not telling you go save $4,900 of it and have fun with $100. That's unreasonable for somebody who's just on their journey. But if you can make sure that you don't just frivolously waste all of that money, if you put some away and address your financial freedom, pay down debt, invest, whatever that looks like, your future self will thank you.
Yep.
Period.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the how would I say it? The value of the money, or the value of the spend, I guess is the best way to put it. It's, let's just use the bonus situation, right? You get a $5,000 bonus, and that's a good chunk of money, right?
Yeah.
So you can go blow it on a Vegas vacation and have a good time, or you might take a couple $100 and maybe buy a new pair of hunting pants and then put the rest into savings, and by the time you're ready to retire, now all that money has turned into something worthwhile, and maybe you've helped your retirement fund. You're not going to retire on $4,500 or whatever it is, but you know what I'm saying. It's that chunk helps to grow. You do that over time. With every increase, there's a good chunk of the money, or it goes into a fund and you do something like we just did and say, we can afford to redo our kitchen. Something that provides you value as opposed to just, like I said, going to Vegas and just kind of throwing down for the weekend.
I don't know, man. Having been to Vegas a whole bunch, it's great, but after about 36 hours in Vegas, it goes south real quick.
Honestly, if I never go to Vegas again, it'll be too soon. It was just the first place that came to mind for me for spending money.
I mean, that is a good place to spend money. But yeah, to your point, I think we talked, I don't know if it was the last episode or the one prior, where I'd mentioned Warren Buffett. And most of Warren Buffett's wealth has come in the latter stages of his life. So he's consistently been setting the table for his future self.
Yeah.
For, what is he, 90 years old? 90 years. But
I would
because
argue that he's at his future self at this point, though.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's pretty close to kicking the bucket. But you think about somebody like that $4,500 now, if we're using that same bonus example, what's that going to look like in 10 years or 20 years?
Yeah.
It's something that it's very hard when we are in a society where we are told that we are consumers, that everything needs to happen now. We're consumers who are inundated with ads everywhere. You get on any website that you like to go to, you get those retargeting ads from Amazon following you around, showing you something that you put in your cart or even looked at 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
Every time you watch a video on YouTube, what are you inundated with? Ads. Every time you turn on Hulu to watch a show, ads. Every time you drive down the freeway and you look up, ads. We live in a country of consumerism where they want you to spend, and they want you to spend that money now. This isn't something easy. But I will tell you from experience, it's worth it. It doesn't mean that we can't indulge ourselves. As you talked about, it's important to make those decisions to spend money on things that keep you going, but within reason.
Yeah.
Having that discipline to just say no when you're surrounded and inundated and thinking in the back of your head, oh man, I really need that 5th biking jersey for my bike because the 4 I have, if I get a 5th, I can go another week without having to wash them, or whatever stupid justification you have in your head. Whatever that looks like, I don't care. I want an extra pair of spats for jujitsu because mine are a little funky and rank and I don't want to have to wash them again. Or, oh man, I really want that new pair of shoes because they look really cool. There are always going to be justifications. But if you really take a second to think about it, I was told this once. It's like, if there's something that you really want, that's fine. Write it down and wait. Don't immediately go get it. Wait 24 hours, wait 48 hours, wait a week. Do you still want it? If the answer is no, it's probably something you don't need. If it is, still on that, like if it's still there after a week, all right, make some plans to do it. But teaching yourself that discipline, it really, I promise you from experience, it will begin to set you free. I promise you that, because I've lived it for 30 some odd years.
Yeah, the idea of discipline with finance is very important because we said we weren't going to talk about the gym, but here comes the gym.
Oh, you jerk.
It's the same idea as working out though, because it's a repetitive thing that gains you increasing results, exponential growth. Literally in the idea of compound interest, exponential growth. But if you work today and you say, okay, I'm going to not spend frivolously, right? I'm not going to get that coffee on the way to work. I'm not going to eat out lunch. I'm going to bring a sandwich, brown bag it. I'm going to, whatever, not put super in my car. I'm going to put regular gas, whatever it is, whatever stupid little things that you spend extra on that you don't have to. You do that for a day, and then you do it for a week, and then you do it for a month, and then you do that for 12 months. All of a sudden, you start to see exponential gains because not only are you not spending the money, but now there's going to be surplus and savings that's going to grow, especially if you invest it in something, with a good return. It's the same concept with the gym, right? You go to the gym and you work out and you see that growth over time. So, but it's a discipline. The greatest part about both of those though is if you fall off the wagon, it's not like you go back to square one, right? With assuming, well, with the assumption of finances that you don't just, have a blowout weekend or month and destroy everything you've done, right? Okay, so you make a decision to screw it, I'm putting the lift kit on the truck, and you spend whatever, I don't even know how much those things cost anymore, but you spend that money and you go, but you're not like, you haven't bankrupt yourself on that. You get to start again and kind of keep building. And that discipline just kind of builds discipline. That makes sense to you? I mean, is that driving?
You know what? I was like, you bring the gym into it. Where's this thing going to go? Pull
Yeah.
it off. I'll allow it. That checks out. That's what it is. We have to teach ourselves discipline. Those compounding gains will absolutely benefit us. So we talked about a lot of things. Again, this is all conceptual. We're not going to give you specific financial advice. We're not financial advisors. There are myriad books out there. In the show notes, we might reference some books that we like. Might even make some social media posts about that. But Dan, here's a question I want to ask you.
Yeah.
If there's something tactical that you could tell a guy to get his finances in order, maybe he's just getting off the ground.
Yep.
What are you going to tell him? What would that advice be?
Track your expenses, track your spending. That is honestly the easiest way to figure out where your money's coming from and where it's going, and where you can make potential cuts. There's a good chance that you are thinking, oh, I only spend $100 a month on eating out, and after doing this for a month, you go, holy crap, that's $350 that I spent. All those little $10-15 lunches, they add up, and I went, we went out on 3 date nights when I thought we only went out on 1 per month, or whatever it is. That getting your hands on the big picture and figuring out where your money comes from, where it goes, how much you're spending, and how much you're bringing in and how much you're spending is key. It's what every business in the world does on a monthly basis, is they look at their income, top lines and bottom lines. Do the same thing for your household and figure out if you're in the black or in the red every month. And then how do you get yourself more into the black every month? More into the black also may mean not necessarily spending less, but making more, which is, I know, something you've been playing with. It's figuring out how to make that top number bigger as opposed to that bottom number smaller. So
yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. That's the same recommendation I would have. If you don't know how much money you're spending, you need to find out.
Yeah.
Period. There are so many apps, there are so many tools out there. You could literally write down your expenses by hand. You could use an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets. There are a lot of apps out there. Mint is a popular one. I don't love Mint, but it's out there and it's free. I use You Need a Budget, or YNAB. I really like that. It's automated. It pulls everything in. It makes it really easy. Pulls in all the expenses. You just need to categorize them. Shows you your budgets. There's Every Dollar by Dave Ramsey. Use something. Start now. Know where you are. And then what you can identify once you do that is, I thought I was spending $100 a month on food, but it turns out I'm spending $500 a month on food.
Yep.
Once you have that baseline, you can start to budget. Say, okay, if I spent $500 on food last month, I'm going to allow myself a budget of $400 this month, and then track religiously against that. Be dedicated. That's why I recommend, more so than anything, is finding a system that works for you. Whether that's Excel, whether that's YNAB, or writing it down, or whatever, you have to do something that's sustainable. That sustainability is what is going to allow you to be successful.
So I'm laughing a little bit because, we were just joking about the gym, but this has the same effect as tracking what you eat.
Yeah.
Right? Just the fact that you're doing it, all of a sudden you're more conscious of your financial situation. you're gonna make that decision of, do I really need that coffee on the way to work? Do I really need, to go to the movies tonight? Do I need to, whatever it is, you're at least conscious of, okay, now I have to track this and account for this, and and figure out how I'm going to make this work in the grand scheme of things. And it will make you approach the whole situation better.
Yeah. Just do it. As hard as it sounds, or as daunting as it seems, I promise you there are few things more worthwhile in your life than tracking what you spend against what you make. You got to do it.
So let me ask you this. You said you use YNAB, right?
Mhm.
Does that give you all the analysis that you like, or do you
So
parse out information from that?
I parse out information from it. YNAB's reporting is actually pretty limited. What I do like about it is you essentially set up your envelopes or your budgets for everything, every single thing that you spend every month. So it takes some initial setup, but then once you do, everything's automated. It links to your bank accounts, it picks up on those bank accounts, and it looks for recurring. If you have recurring expenses,
Yeah.
it automatically links those up. So you just go in and authorize them, and it takes money from that budget or your folders, if you will. So it's very, very easy. I do prefer tracking through kind of like reporting and some of that through Excel a lot more because it's a lot more malleable and customizable. But in terms of actually telling me how much I have against how much I should have and what I'm shooting for, YNAB nails it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do kind of the same thing. I use Quicken for my finances,
Yeah,
and
Quicken's
their
good.
their reporting's pretty good. But I've had a spreadsheet that I use for years and years that looks a lot like a business balance sheet,
Yeah.
and I'll take the output of one and throw it into that, and it gives me, what I like about it is that I can look at it from month to month and see trends. And if I start to see like my dining out or my, whatever is trending one way or another, the groceries is a good one for our house. I can kind of start to wrangle that up a little bit. So
Yeah. And you and spreadsheets, man. I
hey,
bet that thing
listen,
looks great.
it's sexy.
I don't know if I'd use the term sexy, but
I'm an
right.
engineer. All right. I think that was a good conversation, though. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Start cutting back expenses. It might be a long road. It might seem daunting. It might even seem impossible. But I promise you it's not. You just have to be willing to act intentionally, sacrifice, and don't stop.
Yep. That's great advice. I would give very much the same. Tracking is key to this whole process. We've alluded to a lot of the different authors and books, and we'll probably have some links in the show notes on the website. But you can use whatever process works for you and makes sense for you. But the bottom line to all of them is you need to know what's coming in and what's going out, and how each one of those breaks down, and how you can influence each of those in your life. It may mean that you got to buckle down and get that second job so that top number goes higher, because you've already whittled down the expenses to the point where you can't whittle them anymore. It is what it is. But you've got to know the numbers so that you can make those decisions.
You nailed it.
All right, man. Well, this is a great conversation as always. I appreciate everyone who's been listening so far. We've been definitely more active on the social media lately, and been seeing some interaction from folks, which is really exciting. So I appreciate that, and I encourage you guys to all, keep that up and do it some more. Feel free to please share us with friends and family, and get the word out. That's going to drive our numbers up and allow us to help more men. Like we've always said, you can find us on the website, untamingmasculinity.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, have been our two big hitters as far as social media goes. And the other thing that you can do that can really help us is leave us a rating or review. Ratings and reviews are key to us getting advertised on the platforms that this podcast come out on. So we appreciate that, and let us know if you do, because we want to see them, and we want to we want to know that people are giving us some love out there. So
Yeah, we love the feedback. So thanks to everybody who's reached out and given us positive words of encouragement or torn us to shreds. We appreciate it all.
both are appreciated. Absolutely. So, all right, until next weekend or next week, we will talk to you then.